Hi, John. So I'm looking at the costing for your platform, and you're anticipating that this would hit around $15 billion in the first year. Is that correct? And just wondering, you know, some governments have decided to go even larger into the deficit area, wondering why you're not considering going, I guess, even bigger with the deficit.
Well, thank you, Binder. And I've been, this is my, I think, 5th election campaign. They're starting to blur together. And never has there been a time when a journalist has asked me, how come you're not going further into deficit? So that speaks, I think, to the extraordinary times that we live in. British Columbia's budget was balanced in February. It was balanced for the next 3 years. We had the fastest rate of economic growth, the lowest unemployment rate. We were the envy of the country. And it's because of that strong fiscal position and the work of Carol James and our team to keep our finances in order while we expanded the services that people need that's allowed us to have our economic recovery start with the $6 billion that we announced while we were in government, adding again additional resources here to lift the budget deficit for this year to about $15 billion. In addition to that, of course, is an additional $3 billion for capital, not this year, next year, and the year after that, for a total of $9 billion in more. That means more schools, more bridges, more transit, more opportunities for work. I believe that this is a safe investment for British Columbians. It's thoughtful. We haven't been reckless about this. We understand that when this is over, we're going to have to dig out from underneath it. I believe these investments will create opportunity for people and allow us to deliver the services that are so important to British Columbians.
Binder, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, as looking at through some of these new promises, some of them seem to be from the Liberals. If I look at the pay equity transparency that you're promising, if I'm looking at childcare being brought into the Ministry of Education. I know that, you know, with the minority government, you weren't able to do all those things, but have you borrowed here from other parties, and do you believe that, why do you believe now is the time to do it when these are some of the things that you rejected previously?
Well, I find it inconceivable that these would be Liberal ideas. The BC Liberals were in government for 16 years and they did not advance childcare. They did not advance pay equity. Did not advance any of the issues that are contained in this platform. I'm humbled that, you know, imitation is the highest form of flattery. If the Liberals want to imitate the ideas that we're bringing forward and have been implementing for the past 3.5 years, good for them. It's nice that they're catching up now. But they had a decade and a half to make life better for British Columbians, and they went in the opposite direction.
Our next question is from Rob Shaw.
Well, hey, Premier, can you explain the rationale in giving people, you know, essentially cash at this point in the pandemic recovery? There have been other aid packages. Like, what is the hope that that will do for people and for the economy?
Well, the package will cost about $1.4 billion, and that's putting dollars right into the pockets of those families that need it the most. This is for people with a family income of $125,000 or individuals with an income of about $62,500 a year. I believe those are the people that are struggling right now. Those are the people that need to have those extra dollars to make sure that they can get by, not just through this pandemic, but into the recovery period. I think this is a good investment in people. They'll not put this in tax havens in the Grand Caymans like those that are looking at BC Liberal tax cut proposals. They'll put this money right back into the community, investing in small businesses, making purchases that will stimulate other economic activity. I think this is prudent economics, and it makes sense right now, particularly as we come through COVID-19. We're far from out of the woods. These dollars will be important to the families that are here today and families right across British Columbia.
Rob, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, thanks. Going back to the costing of it, I noticed that, I guess, you as a party, but also as a government, can't even begin to project what next year's finances are going to be for the province. There's no deficit projection, there's no revenue projections, there's no sense of this. So if the deficit continues to worsen and you're still spending about $2 billion a year on these extra platform promises, is that going to be acceptable in your view with a higher deficit number possible next year?
Well, I go back to Binder's question, Rob. Why aren't you spending more? And that's a legitimate question. I'm not being dismissive, Binder. I absolutely understand where you're coming from. We believe this is prudent. We believe this puts the stimulus in the hands of the people who need it the most. The economic recovery involves building out British Columbia, connecting people and communities. That's what we're going to be focusing on. And if this is, as I said, when Carol and I announced the stimulus package back in March and the economic recovery Stronger BC last month. If this isn't sufficient to meet our challenges going forward, we'll make additional investments. But our fiscal situation is so solid here in British Columbia. We've got a lot of space to make these choices that other provinces and other jurisdictions around the world, quite frankly, don't have. We don't want to be reckless. We want British Columbians to know that we've got their backs. We also want them to know that we're not just throwing money to try and buy votes. We're throwing money at people to stimulate economic activity, to keep them safe, and to build the services that people need. Investing in urgent primary care centres, more hospitals, cancer care, training doctors and nurses and nurse practitioners right here in British Columbia to meet the deficit in healthcare providers that the BC Liberals left to us. They had 15 years to figure this out. They squandered that time. We're playing catch-up in the midst of a global pandemic, but I'm proud of the work we've done, and I can't wait to get going on the work we need to do.
Our next question today is from Richard Zisman.
On the $1,000, up to $1,000 deposit for British Columbians, when did you come up with this idea, and did you hold it out of the economic recovery plan that was announced just a few days before the election in order to save it for the platform?
Well, we've been thinking about what the needs of British Columbians for 3.5 years, since the last election. And we've been bringing forward ideas in each budget. In the minority government, we have to work with our partners in the confidence and supply agreement to come up with things that they were prepared to support. We believe an election campaign is a time to put forward ideas and ask British Columbians what they think of those ideas. I believe that looking at what the former government, the BC Liberals, offered up, tax cuts across the board, tax cuts that would help only the wealthy. If you wanted to buy a yacht, the BC Liberals are your team. For us, it was about getting money into people's pockets so they could make those expenditures in communities to stimulate more economic activity, to keep small retailers going, to keep restaurants going, to have a few bucks in your pocket to go out and buy a meal every now and again. I think that's what British Columbians want to see from their government, especially during this time of CERB and the emergency benefit that Alvin benefited from in our previous plan. The success of that plan made us feel that this was the right way to go. Putting this forward now is appropriate, and I know British Columbians are anxious to have the resources. We're going to get them to them as quickly as possible.
Richard, do you have a follow-up?
I will ask again. Did you decide on this before the election and hold it out of the plan, considering that people could be getting this money now, if not perceiving it for a fancy-looking election platform promise?
We did not contemplate this until we were putting together the platform, which was not until after the election was called. We put this together over the past couple of weeks based on what we see as the needs of British Columbians, and I believe it's appropriate, and British Columbians will respond positively to it.
Our next question is from Justin McElroy.
Hi, John. A question about the rent freeze promised for 2021. It was just a month ago that you dropped the maximum allowable rent increase for next year to just 1.4%. So I'm wondering how this would work for people who have already been locked into that lease for the next year.
Well, those leases have been agreed to, and they will be binding on the landlords and the tenants. This freeze will go into next year. It will be every increase after that will be held to the rate of inflation. There will be provisions for investments in suites and units, receipts, and all of that will be recouped through other mechanisms within the Residential Tenancy Act. I believe this is an appropriate way to go when housing uncertainty is at its highest, I think, in BC history with the pandemic. I think it's appropriate we keep people in place. Good tenants are hard to come by. Good landlords are hard to come by. I believe the vast majority of those people are finding each other, and that benefits everybody.
Justin, do you have a follow-up?
I do, on the platform point of saying we'll work with communities to complete the SkyTrain expansion project to Langley. Does that mean that your government is fully committing to spending the approximately $600 or $700 million when you look at previous funding models for the expansion from Fleetwood to Langley City? And why is there nothing about the UBC line extension in there as well?
Well, we're waiting for phase 3 of the SkyTrain plan, or the rapid transit plan, to come from TransLink and the Mayor's Council. We believe sending the signal that we want to get to Langley. That's where the fast-growing populations are that need to get back into the city. Getting out to Arbutus is the first priority here in Vancouver, and then extending on to UBC will be the next phase, and we'll await that to come from the Mayor's Council after we get started on phase 2.
Our next question is from Lisa Yuzda.
Hi there, Premier. I'm wondering, with schools, and you've heard the concerns that parents and families are having, if you are re-elected, what would you do to improve the situation? There are parents feeling, and I'm sure you've heard it, very unsure that they're not getting the communication they need, that they don't feel like they're having a voice in how this plan is rolling out with COVID in schools. What would you do to improve that situation, to improve the communication, and to improve their confidence in what's happening?
Now that the school year is underway, families are in touch with the schools that their kids are in. They're able to talk to the administrators, the principals and vice principals. The superintendents in districts right across British Columbia are looking at any of the challenges that they may have, whether it be with communication or other concerns in classrooms. And we have in place advisory groups of teachers, support workers, parents, as well as the Ministry of Education. We worked very, very hard to make sure everyone had a say, but that doesn't end with the beginning of the school year. I've said from the beginning, Lisa, this is about making sure that we continue to develop the best plan possible, and that's by getting new information and then adjusting and acting on that new information. So for those parents who are concerned, their first course of action is to talk to the principal and the administrators in their school, make sure that they have all the information that they need, and be confident that public health officials have always had a plan for sicknesses in schools. Pre-pandemic, we've redoubled those efforts. We put a whole bunch of money, about $270 million, into making sure that kids are safe and that teachers have the equipment they need and the space in classrooms to provide a quality education through one of the most challenging times any of us could have imagined. Is it perfect? Certainly not. But we're going to work every day to do what we can to make it so.
Do you have a follow-up, Lisa?
Yes, I'm asking what you would do. I assure you that parents have done those things. They have talked to their superintendent. They have talked to health, and they are not feeling like they are hearing what they need. There are schools that are feeling that they are not getting what they need. The BCTF out today with a survey of teachers saying that they're still not getting what they need. There's a breakdown when it comes to superintendents and school districts giving schools what they need, and there's not enough oversight is what we're hearing. So what will you do to make sure that happens? We have not been able to get a hold of the Ministry of Education. I understand there's a caretaker government, but there was a lot of challenges before the election was called getting these answers from the minister.
Again, local districts are autonomous. They deliver the services to families. They make sure kids are safe. They're there with teachers, with support staff, doing their level best to make sure communication is what it needs to be within the community. I'm sure everyone is working as hard as they can. No one is sleepwalking through this extraordinary time. If there's more resources needed, they'll be available. I believe that communication has to continue each and every day. If you don't get the answer you want on Tuesday, you should ask again on Wednesday. And I'm not saying that this is a perfect situation. Everyone understands that. But why we are where we are in British Columbia right now, leading the country in our response to COVID-19, is because people have been tolerant and focused on working together to find the solutions that all of us need. We need to keep going on that. We need to focus on the fact that we're not in this by ourselves. We're all in this together.
Our next question is from Matt Preprost.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Horgan. If re-elected, will you commit to ending the provincial state of emergency and managing the pandemic without it? And will you commit to a winter and spring sitting of the legislature? Thank you.
Well, on the latter, there are fixed calendars for the legislature. We've adhered to that. I spent 12 interminable years in opposition calling on the BC Liberals to have a fixed calendar. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. I believe that it's important for the legislature to sit several times a year. I know that there will be 87 people elected on the 24th of October, all of them wanting to get to work right away. I'm committed to that. With respect to the state of emergency, emergency, that's in the hands of the situation we find ourselves in. Provinces across the country remain in the same place we are. We have professional government workers, professional public servants who are working every day to make sure British Columbians are safe. That has always been the case, and I'm confident that we'll continue through that until such time as we can lift the state of emergency and get back to something resembling normal. But British Columbians have responded well to guidance and to the restrictions that we put in place, and it's benefited us all.
Matt, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, one quick question here about Site C. River diversion was achieved on the weekend, according to BC Hydro, yet there's still ongoing concerns about the geological problems on the south bank of the river, with reports that the foundation for the spillway and generating station is slipping some 70 feet into the Peace River gumbo. Is it prudent to continue with Site C at this time?
I'm not familiar with the assertions you just made. What I do know is that when there was concerns about stability on the bank, we appointed an engineer, a former deputy minister of Highways, a former deputy minister of finance, to look at the situation independently and report back to government. I understand that that work is underway. I'll have a better opportunity to answer that question when I've seen that work.
Our next question is from Andrew McLeod.
Yeah, hi, Horgan. You're promising a new medical school. I'm wondering if you could provide a little more detail on that, like where you're thinking and how many doctors and other health professionals a year you're thinking.
Well, what we're looking, we're going to be talking to all of the post-secondary institutions in British Columbia to see where the best fit would be. Certainly, I believe the best course of action would be to make sure we're close to hospitals, mostly in the Lower Mainland, I would suspect. We already have some seats at UNBC in Prince George. There's some medical teaching being done at UVic as well. UBC, of course, is the center, the hub, and I think a hub and spoke model is going to be the best way forward. Adrian Dix has been working on this for some time. He'd be in a better position to answer the details about this, but what I do know is the former government did not invest in training the next generation of healthcare workers. They had a program called the GP for Me that was a great bumper sticker, but did nothing to bring healthcare closer to people. We've been focused on urgent primary care centres and, most importantly, a primary care network within communities across BC that connect the diverse healthcare providers, whether they be doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, dietitians, social workers, therapists, bringing them all together so that when patients come to a clinic or come to an emergency room, if they haven't been attached to a doctor, they can connect to the provider that they need. That's a step in the right direction. But what we've discovered, and Adrian's been leading on this, is that we don't have enough trained healthcare providers to provide the services that British Columbians expect and, quite frankly, should be demanding. The Liberals failed on this regard, and we're going to do our level best to succeed.
Andrew, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, sure. On an unrelated topic, the rent supplement promise this time has some significant differences from the rent supplement you promised last time around. I'm wondering if you could talk about those changes and why they were important to make.
Well, we've always felt that a renter's rebate was an appropriate way to go forward. We already have for homeowners the homeowner grants, which is a money given back to homeowners just for the privilege of owning a home. It helps with their property taxes. It helps with improvements on their home. Renters should have access to public dollars as well. We looked at it and we felt that having a means test was an appropriate way to go forward. Many people who are renting don't require an additional break. They have a significant income or sufficient income to meet their needs. So we wanted to focus this, as we have with other initiatives in this platform, on the people who need it the most. And I believe the time has arrived to make sure that all British Columbians, wherever they live, in their own home, in a condominium that they own or they're renting, should have a break on those costs. And that's what Working for You is all about, making sure that we're reducing costs for people in their communities and in their homes.
Our last questions today are from Shannon Waters.
Good morning. I wanted to follow up on the commitment that is framed as new, which is to fast-track decriminalization by working with police chiefs. I believe that's something you've committed to before. So why is it considered new in the platform?
Because we have reiterated with the federal government that we want to see some action. There hasn't been any action. This platform commitment renews that initiative. We're working with a range of issues brought forward largely by Dr. Henry with respect to prescription alternatives. We need more treatment. We need more opportunities to help people when they fall into addictions, whether they have mental health issues as well. We made great progress by being the only province in 2017 to have a standalone minister who got up every day focusing on these issues. We've made an appeal to the federal government. I'm hopeful that they will act. One of our first orders of business in 2017 was to advise law enforcement across British Columbia that we were not interested in prosecuting simple possession. But the criminal code is not our responsibility. It's a federal responsibility. This platform commits the next government, if it's led by me, to ensuring that the federal government follows through on this pledge that I've made to British Columbians.
Shannon, do you have a follow-up?
I do. I'm wondering about this complex care proposal and whether it seems to suggest that you're looking at reopening Riverview, and I'm wondering what that would look like.
Well, the Riverview lands have been a focus of discussion within my government since 2017. Selina Robinson is her community. She's been the Minister of Housing. We've been working with mental health and addictions, with the Ministry of Health, with Housing, BC Housing, to see what we can do about using those lands as the community wants, as a refuge for those vulnerable in the community, those with addictions, those with mental health challenges. So the Riverview lands are a key part of our complex care solution, and we'll have more to say about that following consultation with the community, which has been going on for a couple of years now. But what I'm heartened by is that the council in Coquitlam has said to the province, we want to help vulnerable people. This is a good place to do it. And with that type of collaboration and cooperation, there's nothing we can't do as British Columbians. We have significant challenges ahead of us. As British Columbians, we should not be worrying about jurisdiction. When I think of salmon, for example, talking to Governor Jay Inslee in Washington State, he and I both know that the salmon oftentimes dip their tail into U.S. waters, and the federal government declares that salmon are their responsibility. The bears don't know that. The eagles don't know that. Indigenous people don't care about that. And most importantly, the salmon don't care about that. I think we need governments that focus on the challenges at hand. Let's get the jurisdictional squabbles up on the table and work through them. I'd like to think that I've spent the past 3.5 years working with anyone who wants to work with me. These challenges are not simple, but they need focus and they need attention and they need a stable government for the next 4 years.